Hello gamers and welcome back. I'm Rob, of course, or Warshak if you want to call me by my in-game name, and we're going to be going over another monthly meta. Man, these months are flying by since the release of the Journey to Ungoro. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our monthly meta, we kind of go over the most popular decks in Hearthstone. We cover each individual class, and then within that class, of course, there's different deck archetypes, which we'll cover, again, kind of the most popular ones. And by most popular, I mean when you hit that ranked play button and you go into ladder and you get matched up with against opponents, these are the decks you're going to be seeing 90 to 95% of the time when playing against them. Keep in mind, I can't cover every deck. Wow, that would just take way too long. We just want to cover, you know, the main points and kind of hit out what you're going to see most often. Also, with covering all of the decks, I won't explain every single card within the decks. That's what our deck guides are for. I've known a couple of you guys have suggested, Rob, why don't you cover every card in the deck and then cover all the replacements of all those cards? We kind of do that during our deck guides, which we dive into each individual deck, and we talk about that for 45 minutes to an hour instead of talking about all the decks for about 35 to 45 minutes. So with that, I'll mention a couple things, but keep in mind the deck guides are where you're going to find, you know, the super insightful information, not so much of the broad, this is what decks you can expect to see. So heading on into it, we are using OBS, so I have a little bit different method of using transitions and having stuff pop up. So I might have some issues at sometimes. This is our first monthly meta using the new OBS system, but I don't think it'll be that big of a deal. So without further ado, Priest, this is going to be the Dragon Priest. Originally, the Dragon Priest didn't really run Elise. The Elise was found in the Miracle Priest, which then they would use the Shadow Visions and copy Elise, but we've been seeing more and more often that the Elise is being found in more and more control decks, especially in the Dragon Priest, and again, the Lyra Priest, the Miracle Priest, the Silent Priest, they're all kind of the same. It's like 3 different names for the same deck, right? So this is going to be the Dragon Priest. Again, a lot of people thought that this deck would be dead once the rotation hit. It's still alive. The deck isn't as good as it once was, of course, with all of the dragons that we lost, but the deck still is competitive. Can it get you to Legend? Yes. Is it like as good as Pirate Warrior or Taunt Warrior or Taunt Warrior and Quest Rogue? No. But is the deck fun? Yes, you can get a lot of crazy things off the Curious Glimmer Root, and of course your Dragonoid Operative to be able to make those crazy plays. Also opening up a ton of Elise packs because you play Elise and then you Shadow Visions, and then you hopefully get the pack in your Shadow Visions unless you're looking for, like, you know, a Dragon Fire Potion or some form of CC. But most of the time, if you're going against a controlled class, you can go with the packs, and you basically in this deck have you have infinite value almost between the Lyra, the Elise, the Operatives, the Glimmer Root, the insane health pools you can get with the Talon Priest and the Power Word Shields and stuff like that. This deck is very annoying to play against. The problem is that this deck, it kind of starts off really slow. So again, it's weak to those, you know, token druid decks that can make explosive starts. It's weak to, of course, Pirate Warrior because there's not a lot of taunts in this deck, and by not a lot of taunts, there's no taunts besides the Primordial Drake. And turn 8, I mean, most of the time you're dead by turn 5 or 6, right? So there's no time for that Drake. And besides that, deck has good single target removal with Shadow Word Pain and Shadow Word Death. Be like, well, Rob, you have Dragon Fire Potion, why don't you use that against the Token Druids or the Pirate Warriors, and then you just win. The problem is, you don't live long enough to use Dragon Fire Potion. By the time you use it, you're down at, what, 10, 5 HP, and then they Arcanite Reaper you in the face, GG. So the deck does have its weaknesses, but I would have to say, against control classes, there's where this deck thrives. Also, maybe against some mid-range classes, it could do fairly well as long as you get a decent opener and you're able to kind of hold back their assault. So very cool deck, a lot of options. Keep in mind that the Discover mechanic in this deck is very big with the Shadow Visions, the Dragonoid Operative, and the not really the Clear Glimmer because it's not really a Discover mechanic, but you still have to pick the correct card and then use that card effectively. So I would recommend this deck to those of you who you like to play a lot of different classes in one. I've had a lot of people, I know this is kind of off the side, but a lot of people I'll see play Dragon Priest in our coaching sessions, and they won't exactly know how to use the cards that they obtain through the other classes effectively, which really limits the power of this deck, because a huge portion is being able to Dragonoid Operative, pick the correct card or a really powerful card for, let's say, a situation that we could see a turn or two ahead in advance, and then use that card accordingly. So just make sure that you're trying to pick the best cards off of your Discover mechanic, and you're not pigeonholing yourself into one particular play. This deck has so many options. Don't let your memes be dreams. All right, so moving into the next one's going to be the Silence Priest. This deck has one game plan and one game plan only, and that's going to be playing a minion such as any minion in the deck, to be exact, buffing it up with your plus HP spells, so like Power Word Shield and Divine Spirit, and your, of course, the Talon Priest. From there, you inner fire it, or do you Divine Spirit at first, and then you inner fire it and you do some big bang boosh. You can easily get a card up to like above 30 damage in one turn, and it really doesn't take that much mana. As we can see, the Divine Spirit and inner fire take 3 mana in total. If you have Radiant Elementals out, it reduces the cost of all your spells you're going to be playing that turn by 1. So it's just very compounding, very bursty. The only problem with this deck, though, is if you get a bad hand, it's hard to recover, because this deck is trying to accomplish. There's not multiple win conditions here. You're making a huge minion and going face. Sometimes you can get a huge Lyra turn where you just generate a retarded amount of spells and you can pull off a crazy win that way. But more times than not, I want to say, 70-80% of your games you're going to be winning by making a giant minion. And if you just don't get the combo cards, you just won't get there. Also, yeah, that's about it. The only problem I would have to say is, again, not drawing those particular cards in the draw mechanic, because you only have Northshire Cleric, Power Word Shield, and the Alkali of Pain. There's not a lot of tools to keep drawing to be able to get the pieces that you need. But surprisingly, every time I've played against this deck, somehow our opponent gets kind of exactly what they need. Like within, I want to say 6 to 7 turns, our opponent somehow has made above a 20-20, and we're taking it to the face. So when I say that these pieces are sometimes hard to obtain, not against players like me. So if you've got any form of luck whatsoever, play this deck. You'll have a great time. Super fun deck. Consistency, I would have to say, when playing against it, feels like it's pretty consistent. I've gotten steamrolled quite a few times by this deck. Again, like I mentioned, the only problem is if you just don't draw the pieces, it's very combo oriented. So you have to be able to think a couple turns ahead, guys, put the combo together, execute the plan, and do it well. One note before we move off of Priest is Mass Dispel. You saw that in our Dragon Priest. You also see this in this this particular Priest deck. And the reason being is that Druid, buff Shaman, more so Druid than anything, but Rogue as well. Huge questing adventures, huge Van Cleefs, big token Druid boards get absolutely demolished by Mass Dispel. So, turning their 10-10 Van Cleef into a 2-2, turning all of those, 1-2s, 2-3s, and 3-2s that Druids have, and then they keep buffing them up, and they all have +2, +2, +3, +3, Fletchling, you know what I mean? You can just silence it, and it no longer is an issue, and then you can either follow up with the Dragonfire Potion. And plus it's cycle, too. So I know it's not the most seen cards you have in the deck, like Mass Dispel. Why do you play that? Again, these are my lists, and this is what I'm running. They'll be close to what you see on ladder, but not exactly, because I don't like to copy pasta every single deck list I see on ladder and just kind of go by what everybody's playing. These deck lists, again, are mine. So if you disagree and say, Rob, I don't want to play Mass Dispel, don't play Mass Dispel. Easy as that. Had a lot of comments like that in the past, like, Rob, why are you playing this? Change it. You can change it. These deck lists are not set in stone. All right, so moving on to Paladin, we have the mid-range Murloc Paladin here. Surprisingly, this deck, very successful. Tier 1 deck for sure. It's been... Watching the tournaments recently, every player has Paladin in their lineup, whether it's the aggro version or the mid-range version. Seeing a little bit more mid-range than aggro lately in the tournaments and also on ladder. And that's just because this deck can withstand against Taunt Warrior, and it also has the brute force to be able to win against like Quest Rogue and stuff like that. So it kind of has the best of both worlds. Meanwhile, sometimes with the aggro Paladin, which we'll cover in a second, only has that really burst potential, and after that it kind of fizzles out. But there are ways to kind of get around that, which we'll cover in a second. So this deck, huge amounts of value. It's got the ability to not only have field clear with, of course, a quality concentration and things like that. It has huge burst potential with Megasaur and all your Murlocs. The Hydrologist allows you to pick like Kodo now, which allows you to bring back cards in your hand like Stonehill Defender or the Sunkeeper Tarim, which gives you insane value. Your opponent plays a giant minion, you Aldor Peacekeeper. They have a giant board, you Sunkeeper Tarim. Primordial Drake's crazy, Ragnaros the Light Lord, and Tyrion are just some of the best legendaries in the game. This deck just has kind of all of the pieces needed to outvalue, burst your opponent down with huge board with Megasaur. It's got the ability to heal with Light Lord and True Silver Champion. Not the most efficient healing, but still healing at that. Some decks like Rogue have no healing. It has taunts. I would have to say the only thing this deck doesn't have, that if it did, it would be quite insane, is really good draw. We've added Harrison Jones for that. Not the most, reliable draw, but, you're playing against a warrior, a rogue, a shaman. They're playing weapons. Get rid of the weapons. Get your draw on. You know what I'm saying? And then it doesn't have, like, with the Equality Consecration, it requires turn 6 to happen, while other decks, Maelstrom Portal for Shaman, Lightning Storm, Brawl, stuff like that, they're a little bit cheaper in regards to the amount of mana it takes to field clear, but you're compensated by that by having such a good late game, such a good mid game, and such a good early game as well. So very well-rounded deck, very powerful at the moment, and force to be reckoned with. Moving to the more aggressive paladin, we have a very murloc-y, one-droppy start. You know what I'm saying? We got Grimscale, Tidecaller, Selfless Hero. I've actually added Smuggler's Run in this, and the reason being is most of your Murlocs, the point of this deck is to play as many Murlocs as quick as possible, and then play Divine Favor to refill your hand. So those, when I say run out of steam, those are the games that you don't draw Divine Favor, or let's say you're playing against another aggressive deck, and you're stuck with the Divine Favor in your hand, and your opponent has, 1 or 2 cards too, and the Divine Favor only draws you 1 card. That feels kind of bad, right? But if you're playing against a control deck, they've got 5 or 6, maybe even more cards in their hand. You drop everything, Divine Favor, draw 5 or 6, the game's over. Like, your opponent, it is so hard to come back when you, let's say you've dropped 4 or 5 Murlocs, buff them, and then you can redraw 4 or 5, even 6 cards for 3 mana. It's just, if you've watched any of our Road to Legends recently, a couple of them, this has happened, and it's just such a disgusting, just steamrolly play. Well, I was looking for a particular word. Broke back. Thank you. But yeah, there's not too much thinking. Actually, no, I don't want to say there's a whole lot of thinking in this deck, because that would just be a lie. You play the Murlocs on curve. I guess the biggest decisions you're going to have is kind of what to pick from the Hydrologist, and then maybe what to pick from the Gentle Megasaur. Besides that, the deck is pretty, it runs itself. Yeah. That's about it. All right, so moving on, we're going to be hitting off to Rogue. We're going to be looking at the Miracle Rogue. Super fun deck to play. Our last 2 Road to Legends, I believe, we knocked out some Miracle Rogue. The first episode, not so good. The second episode, we were able to warm up. We played a little bit more, and we did a lot better with it. So the goal of this deck is... all right, so first off, Miracle Rogue. Rob, what does Miracle Rogue mean? Sorry, I need a sip of coffee. My throat. Okay, so on stream, a particular user had asked me, what does Miracle mean? So the deck, you look at it, you're like, well, what is the win condition? Nothing seems to pop out at me, right? You got a bunch of 1-drops, bunch of 0-drops, bunch of 2s and 3s, a couple 4s, and 2 Arcane Giants. Arcane Giants, they're good, but they're not crazy. Normally, you can play a Gadgeton Auctioneer, and then because you have so many 1-drops and 0-drop spells, you're able to draw, I want to say upwards of anywhere between 3 to 10 cards in one turn, depending on how many cards, first of all, you have in your hand, what your opponent's board looking like, and what you end up being able to prep, counterfeit, coin, backstab, what your swashbucklers give you. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, but for the most part, the miracle comes with being able to draw huge amounts of cards in one turn, and because you played so many spells in one turn, for every spell that you played, your Arcane Giant gets reduced down by 1 mana because of its ability. So you're ending up being able to play Arcane Giant for, anywhere between 0 to 2 to 3 mana for the most part. So sometimes you can go like Gadgeton Auctioneer, a bunch of spells, kill all of your opponent's creatures while buffing your questing adventure, and then drop 2 Arcane Golems. And your opponent is like, da hello. And then they kind of just die. Also, being able to play all those cards in one turn, your shares and Corpse Flower keeps coming back to life, which either your opponent is going to have to deal with by using some of their spells, which is kind of not the best for them, just because you keep bringing it back, and it's just kind of infinite value. And then on top of that, if they're not killing it, it's going face for 5, and if it's not going face for 5, it's killing their creatures, which allows you to build up other stuff on your board, which allows for a lot of chip damage for an explosive burst at the end, again, through a questing adventure, Arcane Giant, Evises, and stuff like that. Besides that, You could be like, Rob, why is there an Eater of Secrets in your deck? The reason being that Mage, especially Secret Mage and Paladin, is really popular right now. And the fact that they're able to play Secrets, 2 or 3 of them sometimes, by turn 5, you Eater of Secrets, instantaneous Kinsamida on the floor. Also with Paladin, getting past that Kodo Rider, if they have a taunt in the way, is quite annoying. Secret Eater of Secrets, eat that shit. Yum yum in the tum-tum. He likes it, you like it, they Kinsamida, and it feels good, man. Besides that, no real secrets in this deck. A couple things you may be asking, Rob, why only 1 sap? Why only 1 fan of knives? Also, where is your Shaku the Collector? I've kind of explained those in our Road to Legend episodes where we played this deck. I believe they're the most recent too, so if you want further information, I'd look there. But again, my builds, play it as you wish. If you want to tech in another one and minus a hallucination and just go pure copy passive like Asmo, that's fine. Again, I kind of just do my own thing when building the deck list. The important thing is the core is there. The core of the deck is there, but there's a few other cards that I like to, add. The next one is going to be the Quest Rogue. Holy moly mackerel. You've seen this more times than not on ladder. Most of you are most likely sick of this deck, and you don't even want me to cover it right now. The problem is it's super popular, and it's going to be at the beginning of every month because it's a deck that you can be able to play very quick games. Very high consistency in the most part, unless you just seemingly draw bad every game. Some of us happen to be like that. Some of us don't. But very consistent, very powerful deck. Brought to most players bring this in their lineup, and every tournament they go to, it either gets banned out, and if they play it, it's kind of an easy win. The point of this deck, for those of you who are just starting or kind of unfamiliar, I don't know how you're unfamiliar, this deck is everywhere. The quest says if you play the same minion 4 times, you get this quest, and when it gets completed, all of your minions are 5/5s. So let's say your opponent devolves your board after you've played the quest, all of the minions are still 5/5s. Your opponent sheeps one of the minions to make it a 1/1, the sheep is a 5/5. You get the point. Very annoying. And there's so many cheap creatures in this deck that you're playing, 2 mana, 1 mana creatures that are generating more creatures, they're drawing you more cards. There are 5/5s, you only have 30 health. You did the math, you're going to die pretty quickly once this quest is completed. A lot of these guys have charge, or they freeze your board, or they get returned to the hand to deal more damage. It's just a crazy deck if it gets, again, the correct draw. Similar to like the Silence Priest, but I would have to say this deck getting the cards is even easier than the Silence Priest because there are so many ways to complete the quest, whether you're shadow stepping, you're using the Panda Brewmaster, you're using the Ferryman, or you're using the Firefly and Ignis Elemental to be able to create the little elementals, or just our Mimic Pods, or Vanish. The whole deck revolves around doing this thing while also being able to charge, generate value, and draw cards. So crazy deck, and very powerful at the moment. We had actually already done our deck guide on this, so if you're interested in that, the deck guide on this deck is on the page under deck guides. Moving to the next one, there's currently really only one Hunter deck that strikes the eye, and it's really not even that popular at that, but it's the Midrange Hunter. Again, this is my build. I know the Wardens aren't very popular, but I figured if you're going to play Raptor Hatchling and put a 1-drop 1/4 in your, or a 1 mana 4/3 in your deck, you're going to want to draw that, and the Warden does that. On top of that, Hunter has no draw, and you kind of want to get all of your 1-drops out of the way when you're going into top decking mode and you're looking for Savannah Highmane. So I found the Wardens to be exceedingly helpful, plus it helps your Savaging Hyena. The point of this deck to curve out, it's not a very hard deck to play correctly. It's probably one of the decks that has the least amount of options in regards to plays per turn, and a lot of them are kind of like right in your face. Like, turn 1, do I play Alley Cat or Hungering Crab? I don't know, probably Alley Cat. Follow that up with Flare or Scavenging Hyena when he played like a 1/1, and you can play the Hyena and trade a 1/1, the Hyena gets buffed. Like, there's not a whole lot of crazy plays there. Animal Companion, if you get Huffer, you go face. Savannah Highmane, go face. I mean, there's not Hunter hero power. Do I hit a minion or do I go face? Oh wait, it only goes face. So there's not, like, I don't want to, it's just one of those decks that's very beginner friendly. And it's fairly cheap, 2100 dust to be able to hit Legend. Doesn't really seem that bad. And you'd be like, Rob, I played this deck or a deck close to this. I can't hit Legend. I'm stuck at rank 12. Does the deck suck or do I suck? I don't want to be mean, but it's not going to be the deck at that point. Midrange Hunter can hit Legend. I wouldn't want to say that you suck, but maybe sometimes players get tunnel visioned into thinking one way, and the reason being is they play too quickly, and if they feel like if they rope out every turn, they're being annoying or bad-mannered. Some turns, again, don't take the rope, but some turns where you have 2 or 3, 4 options available to you, and it's kind of one of those, I call them the climax turns, where anything, it either shifts in your direction or shifts in your opponent's direction. There's about 1 or 2 turns of these per game, which I don't want to get into it too much, but there's normally 1 or 2 turns per game where that turn decides who wins the match, or who's in the driver's seat of the match. And being able to capitalize on those turns and identify those turns and being able to play accordingly and lead up to it is very important. So not that someone's bad for not being able to play Hunter to Legend, it's just that sometimes they just don't see the big picture. They're looking at a bunch of little pictures, and they just don't see the whole thing, which is not their fault or your fault. It just takes time. Hearthstone is not a game you sit down and you become legendary over fucking 3 hours. I've been playing this for 3.5 years and I still suck. Alright, so moving to Druid, we have the Jade Druid, a deck that's been around for a while now, since Mean Streets, of course. Very powerful deck. A lot of people kind of looked at Jade Druid and said it's going to be a deck that just destroys any control deck, which they're right, for the most part it does. But some matches, you know, you're able to outvalue the Jades by being able to beat them to, how do I explain this? Beat them to the punch, I guess you'd say, because it takes a while for the Jade Druids to start building this huge Jade Golem army and being able to go super infinite value mode with like Auctioneer, you know, Jade Idol into Jade Idol into Jade Idol, and the Golems are, you know, 11, 11, 10, 10, 12, 12. They're huge, you can't kill them, GG. But it takes a long time for this to happen. So, you know, let's say there's 2 control decks, a Jade Golem Druid, and, you know, a Taunt Warrior or a Control Mage. The Taunt Warrior Control Mage can tempo out the Druid just because of how long it takes the Druid to kind of get the ball rolling. But let me tell you, once the Jade Druid gets the ball rolling, it's game over. And they've got a lot of tools in their little kit here that allows them to not only gain armor and sustain over long periods of time, they've got taunts that get in the way, they've got tons of value with Nourishes, Gadgets, and Auctioneers for very explosive turns. Also, if the Jade deck gets a very good start, you kind of just keep snowballing into Jades and Jades and Jades, and your opponent never has time to really get the tempo they need to kill you. You're just killing them so quickly. So, very powerful list right now. Again, 6,400 dust, and this is like the final build. You're able to build this deck a lot more budget oriented, which I believe I did in our top 5 budget aggro, mid-range, and control decks, and we went over kind of every popular deck, toned it back to a budget-based deck. And if you're interested in those, we do have those on the channel as well. Getting a lot of questions lately of people asking for the same videos I've done. I'm not sure whether or not I just haven't presented those to you enough or made them easily accessible, but a lot of people have been asking for some stuff that's just, it's like it's the next video over to it. It's like, hey Rob, I don't have the dust for Aya, want Jade Druid, do you have any suggestions? Yeah, the budget-based deck, which was, you know, right next to the video you're watching now. Alright, so looking at the next Druid deck, the Token Druid, I would have to say in regards to what to expect when playing against Druid, I want to say 75% of the time it's going to be Token, 25 Jade. Token a little bit more prominent on ladder, especially towards the later end of the season and the beginning of the season is when you're going to be seeing a lot more of these aggro decks. The reason being that players want to climb. During the middle of the season, players are on this like weird leeway, like happy vacation, let's play fun decks. Toward the beginning of the season, players are like, let's go, gotta get to Legend quick. And towards the end of the season, people are like, oh shit, I haven't hit Legend yet, or I need to get my rank 5, let's go. So it's kind of weird that we see this mentality of aggro at the beginning and end, weird shit in the middle. It's a fucking Oreo. I didn't explain the deck at all. Alright, so looking at the deck, very, very fast-paced. It revolves around playing very resilient or powerful early game minions that not only are highly statted like Enchanted Raven or just generate additional value like the Firefly. From there you play cards like your Mark of the Lotus, your Dire Wolf Alpha to be able to buff those creatures. If you're not buffing them, you're Savage Roaring them for explosive ends. You also can get out Crazy Turn with the Vicious Fledgling, which is, I don't want to say a new addition to this deck, but originally Token Druid did not have this card in it, and it was introduced, I want to say, like, not recently, like I mentioned, like a month ago. And it's becoming more and more popular now. It's probably a very standard card to find in Token Druid, if not like, you know, the most standard card to find. But originally it was actually not in here, which I think is really cool that a card as powerful as this was not seen in the deck at first. And then over time, of course, it was added. Genzo the Shark, I actually saw... who was it? I think it was VLPS or Saiyan have this in their deck, and just seemed like a really cool card to throw in there. So if I were to build this deck, I would put Genzo the Shark in there. I didn't copy pasta the whole deck, but I liked it. Well, okay, he put a cool card in here. Let's test it out, and it seemed to be really awesome. So that's why the Shark is in there, because we know that the Token Druid has no draw. There's no draw in this deck. You play Innervate, crazy shit. You do the cards, Savage Roar, buff, craziness. You have no cards in your hand by turn 3 or 4 most of the time. You throw down the Shark and you're able to draw 3, and he's a 5/4 for 4 mana. The stats are there, the ability's there, fits well in the deck. I don't see why you wouldn't put him. Also, to note, there's 2 ways to build this deck. There's not 2 ways, there's more than 2 ways. But most of the time, it's either with the Murloc package or the Bittertide Hydra package. I like the Hydra package because Innervate, 8/8, to me is a lot more powerful than sometimes Innervate, Finja. Hopefully you get the right Murlocs. Then if you draw the Murlocs, it feels bad. It's just Bittertide Hydra, no matter when you play him, it feels good. Meanwhile, the Murlocs, sometimes when you play him, it feels bad. I want to feel good all the time. So that's where the Bittertide Hydra comes in. But besides that, very standard list, nothing too crazy here. Definitely a tier 1 deck for sure, and it's fairly cheap in regards to, in comparison to like Taunt Warrior and stuff like that. So moving on to Shaman, we've got the Elemental Jade Shaman. These decks, we're at a point now where most of these decks have been refined to the point where there's maybe 1 or 2 cards that can be switched out depending on the meta, but for the most part, everybody's been able to find out all of the new tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 decks with the new cards available to us with, of course, Journey to Ungoro. There's no really surprises anymore with any decks that people can play. Maybe a few tech surprises, but the deck itself, the core of the deck, there's not going to be any more surprises until we get some new cards. So the meta, I believe, has solidified for the most part. With the new... Some people would run Jade Shaman, some people would run Elemental Shaman, and then there was, of course, the mixture like we have here, which has elements from both and doesn't rely too much on one or the other, because if one is lacking, the other can pick up. If the other's lacking, of course, the other part can pick up, which is nice. So a deck we have here, we have a decent early game with like Firefly, Jade Claws, Hot Spring Guardian, stuff like that. Again, we've lost Azure Drake, so double Mana Tide Totem is kind of standard in most Shaman lists. It's got the double Volcano, just in case you don't get a good early game. Volcano is just one of those cards. For 5 mana, 15 damage to the board state is absolutely huge, especially if you can coin into it and you're playing against a Druid. It's almost GG. There's a good amount of healing with the Hot Spring Guardians and the Jinzu Water Speakers. Also with the Servants that can give you more more of the Hot Spring Water Guardians. Hot Spring Guardian? Why am I saying Water Guardian? It's a Hot Spring Guardian. Also, the Calamos Primal Lord can heal you as well. So this deck has a mixture of being able to heal, taunt, control, has weapons. It can do large-scale AoE with cards like Maelstrom Portal and your Primal Lord, of course. And it has good single target with the Hexes and the Jade Claws. This deck, all around, very sturdy deck. Consistent, yes. What is it weak to? I would have to say the Paladin deck, because the Paladin deck has all the resources to kill this deck, but it has a stronger late game. I would have to say the Paladin is more weak to an aggressive deck, while this deck is more resilient to the aggro decks, because this deck has so much AoE and it has good single target removal. It has like cards like Devolve, which really messes up the Token Druid or Rogue. So it kind of depends what you're seeing a lot online. If you see a lot of Paladin, probably not the best deck to play. If you're seeing a lot of Token Druid and a lot of, Pirate Warrior, this is probably a pretty nice deck to play. So it all depends. All right, so moving on to our next Shaman list. It's going to be an interesting list. This is actually, when I was mentioning earlier that the meta hasn't been solidified and there's not a lot of decks entering the meta, this is actually one that has entered the meta, and it's entered quite quickly, and it's actually a quite powerful deck. The cards have been around for a while, but playing them in this particular fashion hasn't been. And it's kind of like the token, or the Bloodlust Shaman is what people call it. I haven't actually played a ton of this deck yet. I played a couple matches, seemed pretty good, very similar to... honestly, if I was going to play something competitive, this is more fun than I would have to say the Token Druid. The Token Druid is better than this, but less fun. This is more fun than Token Druid, but just maybe not as good because there's a lot of random factors when you doppelganger into Evolve. But most of the time, starts off extremely quick. Again, playing as many minions in the early game as possible. You flood the board, and you can get a quick Bloodlust, cheese out some games. If not, if you rely on stuff like Stonehill Defender, Jade Lightning, doppelgangering Thing from Below with the combination of Evolve to be able to make these huge swing turns where you put anywhere between 3 to 5 6/6s plus on your board, and then you're able to either Bloodlust after that or put in 2 turns worth of damage to be able to kill your opponent. So kind of 2 win conditions in this deck through Evolve and Doppelganger, and of course Thing from Below, or you cheese out a Bloodlust with a bunch of your your Blood Sail Corsair, Patches, Firefly, Jade Claws minions, Flame Tongue Totem, Primal Fin Totem, all that good stuff. So heading on over to the Mage, I believe the Mage class is where we have the most decks. I believe there's 3 decks under this one. The first deck we're going to look at is going to be, the Control Mage. We had gone over a deck guide a little bit ago. The deck has changed slightly since that time. We've modified, I believe, 2 or 3 cards. We've added in Elise and I believe the Kabbalist Tome and taken out double of the Couriers. The Couriers, as good as they are with the ability to use Discover to pick what you need, I found the Tome kind of does what they both do, and you get an additional card, and the Elise is kind of a super late game awesomeness card, which allows you to just generate huge amounts of value, and for the most part your opponent can't even play around her because they have no idea what you've obtained from the pack. So very random, very cool deck. One of my favorite decks to play at the moment. Again, Eater of Secrets. It's one of those decks that you can get away playing Eater of the Secrets in because of the fact that you have so many other resources that you're not dependent on 1 or 2 cards to win you this game. It's kind of like all of the cards in this deck have the potential to swing the game in your favor. A crazy Babbling Book can win. A crazy buffing up a Mana Worm is good. And can swing for, I've swung for up to 10 damage on turn like 4 or 5 before, and it feels good. So there's just so many different win conditions that, playing an Eater of Secrets, even if you're not going against, a mage or a paladin or a hunter that plays the secrets, it doesn't feel as bad as some other decks like, I don't know, Token Druid, where if you have Eater of the Secrets, it really affects the deck. Besides that, I'm sure you've seen this deck a lot. I'm trying to come up with something that maybe you wouldn't know, but just, again, very control-y, very value-oriented, has a lot of win conditions. Cool deck. One of my favorites. Moving to the next one is going to be Freeze Mage, the deck that's been around for a long time now. The win condition, for those of you who are not familiar with Freeze Mage, the reason this is probably the least popular of the Mage decks we're going to go over, but I think that you should know about it, because once you play against it and you don't know how to play against it, you're going to lose really bad. So the point of this deck is to be able to basically freeze your board and stall the game to the point where they accumulate enough pieces like Pyroblast, Double Fireball, Frostbolt. From there, they Alexstrasza, they bring you to 15 life, and then of course they burst you down with high quality spells. Meanwhile, they have a huge amount of draw in the deck with cards like Alkali Pain, Loot Hoarder, Novice Engineer, Blood Mage Thalamus, and stall like Frost Nova Doomsayers, Blizzard, Flame Strikes, Ice Blocks, Ice Barriers, the ability to draw those secrets with the Arcanist or Arcanologist. So very intense deck to play. Not one of the easiest in the world to play, guys, but one of the most rewarding. Like when you beat someone with a Freeze Mage, you feel like you earned that win. When beating someone with maybe Pirate Warrior, it doesn't feel as nice because you just swing face. But this one, you have to think ahead. One of the hardest decks in the game to play at the moment. There's, again, you could some say that, oh man, Freeze Mage, super dumb deck, easy to play. The win conditions, Alexstrasza, burn face, every game it's the same, easy. Meanwhile, yes, the game plan is to combo them through 1 to 2 turn lethals. Granted, that is the win condition of the deck. Getting to that point is exceedingly hard because of how many options you have per turn. Normally, some of the hardest decks in this game are the decks that provide you with a 4 to 5 plus options, which means you have different things to do every turn, and there's going to be a correct one, or maybe 2 correct ones, and the rest are going to be subpar. Picking the subpar ones continually will cost you a loss, whilst picking the above par ones or the optimal play will grant you most likely some wins. So with decks that have so many different plans and options, it's very easy to make the wrong mistake. As we remember, we used to play a lot of Control Warrior, and we would spend 30 minutes playing a game, make one mistake, one turn that cost us the rest of the game, because that's just the way the deck was built. You need to make the most optimal play every single turn to be able to win in situations that you wouldn't normally be able to win in. And this deck, it has one win condition. Your opponent's going to stop that at all means necessary. So very hard deck to play, very good deck if you're looking to get better at the game, because if you get good at Freeze Mage, every other deck's going to be easy. All right, so moving to our last mage deck, that's going to be the new secret mage deck. Again, I've built this a little bit different than the normal secret mage that you've seen on ladder. Not so much different where it's unrecognizable. The core of the deck, again, is still there. Bunch of secrets, play secrets for free with the mage. Secret buffers like the Arcanist, but I've actually took out the, what is it? I don't remember the name of the card because it's just absolutely trash, but it says for every secret you play, it costs 2 less, and it's a 5/5. Maybe if it had Taunt, it would be good, like Thing from Below, but the thing is, the card, it's not terrible, but there's just better stuff. And I think the Watcher is a better card, in my opinion. Not only does it have Taunt, it's super highly statted and super annoying, and, just a good card at that. But besides that, the deck revolves around, again, it reminds a lot about the Tempo Mage, but instead of winning tempo through resilient, like Flame Waker and Mad Scientist and going ham with the crazy amount of, 0 to 2 mana spells in one turn, dealing 15 damage, finishing off with like Fireball, Frostbolt, or stuff like that, this deck's tempo is in the form of secrets, causing your opponent to play not very well because they want to play around these secrets, and then playing around these secrets actually costs them more than if they were to just play their game plan originally. So you're more disrupting your opponent into you having tempo rather than taking the tempo for yourself, which I think is pretty cool. And again, a deck that, I think skill is a part, because playing Counterspell versus the Mirror Entity versus the Spellbender, when to play the Arcanist, when do I Fireball a minion versus Fireball face, what do I pick off my Glyph? There's a lot of intricacies to like what you would do in particular matchups, and every match is going to be different. So I think it's a pretty good list if you're looking to play a fun mage deck, no doubt. Looking to the Warrior, we have the Taunt Warrior deck. I'm sure you've seen this on ladder. There's no surprises here. The win condition is play, I believe, 7 taunts it is. And once you get 7 taunts, you get Sulfuras. Sulfuras turns your hero power into 2 mana, deal 8 damage to your opponent's face or minions on the board. Eventually, they don't have anything because you're spending 2 mana to deal 8 damage. Nothing outvalues that. That's too much value. The only way to really beat this deck is to be able to beat it before that time happens, or to be able to burst them down with spells once they change their hero power off of armor. Because a lot of times you'll see that when the Warrior uses Sulfuras, they change their hero power to the Ragnaros. They'll be anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 15 health, and if they're playing against a mage, mages have a lot of burst spells, which they can just keep using face, and eventually the Warrior will die because they can't generate the armor that they normally do because their hero power, again, has been changed. But besides that, very, very powerful late game deck, has good early game removal tools as well. It's just really hard to play around this deck because not only do they have single target removal like Shield Slams and Executes, so you can't really play like one big minion at a time because they'll easily deal with it. But at the same time, if you go too wide, you're like, okay, well, if I can't play one minion, let's play like 4 or 5 little minions and buff them up and go face. Well, they have Brawl, which means I get to clear the board for the most part, and it only cost them 5 mana, and now they can single target removal the one creature left if something really big died, or didn't die. So there's just a lot of, it's a hard deck to play around. It's one of the easiest decks, no, I don't want to say one of the easiest. It's an easier deck to play than some of the others, and it's very, very rewarding in regards to what it can and can't, what it can beat, actually, with its hero power, because it doesn't take a genius to go, okay, 2 mana, 8 damage. 2 mana, 8 damage. Is he dead? No. 2 mana, 8 damage. All right, he's dead now. Like, it's just, it's too powerful of a mechanic to be accomplished by such an easy task, if that makes sense. The last deck we're going to go over, again, not one of the most favorite or best decks I could cover, and it's nothing crazy. It's the Pirate Warrior, but again, it's a popular deck. Again, this is the monthly meta where I cover the most popular decks, and I kind of break down what you're going to see. Pirate Warrior is a deck you're still going to see. We still have to cover it, and you still have to respect it. If you have a deck that doesn't respect aggro decks, you're going to get fucking creamed, and I'm sorry, but it's just going to happen. You have to respect these decks. And players that you play against, you're like, how would they ever beat an aggro deck? Their deck is so fucking greedy. It only beats control decks. Fuck this guy. Trust me. They will and they do get crushed by the token druid and the pirate warrior, and eventually they will get frustrated enough where they'll change their deck to compensate for being able to beat aggressive decks. If not, they're just cancer. Anyway, this deck, for those of you unaware, very cheap in regards to being able to be competitive. You can hit legend with this deck, definitely. It's probably one of the fastest decks to play, because most of the time you either lose by turn 5 or 6 or you win by turn 5 or 6. Sometimes your opponent concedes on turn 1 just because they don't want to play against you. But very curve heavy. Having the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 curve is pretty important, but a lot of the times you can get around that with your weapons, which you constantly use synergies with pirates to be able to buff your weapons to give them more durability charges, which means you can attack face more, which means you can deal more damage to face, which means you kill them faster and you can sustain that damage longer. I don't really have to explain this deck, I don't think, too much, because a lot of you guys have seen it for so long. It's been in a monthly meta now for I think 3 or 4 months, and yeah, if you want to copy it, there's the deck list. I guess the only thing I can mention is, where is the Leroy? The meta right now is in a really interesting place where it's kind of rock, paper, scissors between, you know, the aggro, mid-range, and the control decks. And I found that if you're playing against another control deck, Leroy Jenkins isn't good. If you're playing against a mid-range deck, Leroy Jenkins it's not very good. And if you play against control deck, Leroy Jenkins is good, but it's not necessary because you've got all these other tools. And Captain Greenskin not only is a 5/4, so he's almost to that 6 damage mark as Leroy. I know he doesn't have the charge, but not only is he Pirate Synergy, he gives you an additional upgrade. And if you're playing against, let's say, an aggro class, it's about value. You're not trying to go face when you're playing against a token druid. You have to clear the board. If you don't clear the board against druid, you will get out bursted or whatever. They're gonna be able to beat you in damage. You cannot beat a token druid in damage with Savage Roar and stuff like that. Your damage comes from weapons and like 1 or 2 minions on the board, and then being able to keep doing that over and over and over again and keep powering up that weapon. So normally you'd use your weapon to kill the creatures, and the best way to do that is to add more durability. How do you add more durability? Captain Greenskin. And he's a minion that sticks to the board, and he's pretty high statted in HP and attack. So that's why I have him in the deck instead of Leroy. So with that, thank you for watching another monthly meta. I will catch you again the first day of next month where I'll release the next updated monthly meta. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave that in the comment section below, of course. And if you believe I've messed up on anything, or if you'd like to add on to anything that I've said, feel free to do that as well. Again, I can't cover everything I want to and this time, but again, your input is always welcomed, and I always look forward to reading your feedback. So, as always, I'm Warshak, of course, or Rob, and happy whatever the hell day it is.